We want to thank you for coming out tonight. We hope that this will be a most interesting forum for you. My name is Janet Smith, and I am representing Neighbors for Responsible Growth, and I will be your moderator tonight. Does that mean I take all the blame? No. We're co-hosting this event with Friends of Bolin Creek, so you can blame them a bit too. And I want to thank all of them for the amount of work that they put into this event. The organizing committee consisted of Linda Davis, Erin Lyston, you can raise your hand if you want to be anonymous, that's okay. Julie McClintock, who is never anonymous, Alan Snavely, and Del Snow, whom I think you probably know too. In anticipation of our conversation tonight, we sent out preliminary questions for the candidates for them to answer in writing, and their answers are posted in the back of the room. Now, I understand there's been a snafu with Marie's, and we will have those up on the website, along with the other candidates' answers as well. The forum questions are similar in content to these, so the candidates have had some time to think about their various positions. We made a special effort to reach out to environmental and neighborhood groups and focus the questions on issues affecting these areas. Other forums you attend may have a different slant, and we encourage you to gain a broader perspective by reading more of the candidates' positions and attending other events. There are 4 open seats on the council and the office of the mayor. Election day is November 5th. Early voting starts on October 17th and ends on November 2nd. Our format tonight, so there are 4 open seats, and I want to thank Mayor Kleinschmidt for joining us tonight as well, who is running unopposed and doesn't really have to be here, but he's a good guy. Our format tonight includes 3 subject matter experts who we hope will enrich our discussion. With us are, on housing, Tish Galoo, Chair of Justice United Strategy Team and co-chair of the Affordable Housing Team. On economics and public policy, Dr. Phyllis Pomerantz, Professor of the Practice of Public Policy at the Sanford School of Public Policy at Duke. And on the environment, Dr. Albert Robert Rubin, currently a Senior Environmental Consultant with A.R. Rubin and Associates, an Emeritus Professor in the Biological and Agricultural Engineering Department at NC State. Bios for our tech panel are on your programs, are they? All right, very good. Okay, so that worked. Now let me introduce you to our 9 council candidates. George Cianciola, I'm going to read them alphabetically. George, yeah, okay, I'm going to stand aside. Sally Green, Ed Harrison, Lauren Hintz, Gary Kahn, Paul Neby, Maria Palmer, Amy Bryan, and D.C. Swinton. Also attending, as I mentioned before, is our mayor, Mark Kleinschmidt. I didn't have to say that thing about you. Paul just flew in from Europe, and so if he falls asleep during this, it's because he's jet lagged. The candidate bios are going to be posted on the NRG and Friends of Bolin Creek websites. And if you want to write this down, it's www.bolincreek.org.
You mean the responses to the question?
The responses?
To the question. That's what's going to be online.
Yes, those, yes, right. And I didn't say that right. And the NRG website is nrg-nc.net. And you should go there anyway. Okay, the format and rules for this evening's forum will go like this, so listen carefully. We have 9 questions, 1 for each of the candidates. I will read and assign a question to a candidate who will have 2 minutes to answer. There will be a 15-second warning signal from our timekeeper, Alan Tom, and that's your warning signal. He can wave his fan. You will need to finish your thought and stop at the 2-minute beeper. In the interest of fairness to the other candidates, we request that you stop when asked. Following the initial response, our panel here, or me, can ask follow-up questions and direct them to any of the candidates for a 1-minute answer. We're going to be pretty loose about how we do that. So if they want it to go to a specific person, they can say. They might want to open it for people to raise their hand, or I may pick somebody who hasn't had a chance to speak too much. You'll have 1 minute for that answer, and at 55 seconds, Alan will just let you know, and you finish your sentence. You're done. Run-on sentences receive demerits. I want to emphasize that we will adhere strictly to the clock so that everyone has an equal opportunity to speak. That's real important. At 8:30, each candidate will be given one closing question to answer in 1 minute. Mayor Kleinschmidt will finish with a 2-minute summary of his choosing. At 8:40, we will open up questions to the floor. So if you have questions, write them down, remember them. We're going to give you an opportunity to ask, and you can speak to any of the candidates. We reserved about 20 minutes for that, so it's an important part of the evening, and we respect the fact that you came out, and you probably have some things you want to ask. I want to thank you all for coming, and your interest in supporting this important part of the democratic process. Before we get going, will you please check your cell phones and make sure they're off, silenced, on vibrate, or whatever. Okay, let's begin. Oh, you have one mic to share. That's so that you don't talk over each other. Okay, the first question is for George. Please define your vision of Chapel Hill and what you would do to protect it.
Chapel Hill is, I believe, a compassionate, generous. Chapel Hill is a compassionate, generous community in which people love to participate. It's also a very beautiful community. So what I would do to protect it is ensure that the public has the participatory capability that we've begun in the last couple of years with the Chapel Hill 2020 process. In terms of protecting the beauty, I think it's important that we strengthen our environmental protections. We have to look at our stormwater. Obviously, this past year, we've seen some significant issues with stormwater. I think we need to revisit whether our existing ordinances and our existing regulations are significant. In terms of tree canopy, I think we've done a lot over the last several years to protect the tree canopy. In terms of the roadway system, we don't have a lot of capability with the state, but I think we need to do our best to enhance our sidewalks, our bike paths, and our greenways. One of the things we found in Chapel Hill 2020 was that the vision the citizens have for Chapel Hill is one that is for enhanced transit, for enhanced bikeways, sidewalks, greenways, for enhanced affordable housing. All of these things are great, and they reflect our generous and compassionate community. And I think what we need to do is find ways to pay for those things so that we ensure that we can keep up the quality of life that citizens have begun to appreciate. Thank you.
Follow-up question? Any follow-up questions? Okay. You sure? All right. Let's move on. Amy Bryan, you have the next question. We didn't seat you like this. There are many planning efforts currently underway around town. Ephesus Fordham, Central West, Downtown, Rosemary Imagine, Bodie Creek, as well as major approved projects in other areas. How do we integrate all this activity to ensure the best cumulative impact for the town?
Well, I think that there's a couple parts to that question. First of all, I think that the planning board has spoken on this issue, and we've actually petitioned council to say we have a lot going on now, and it's very, very hard for people to make all these meetings and keep up with everything that's going on. So we're hoping that as implementation proceeds, that we'll kind of alter that schedule a little bit and slow things down, because I know some nights there will be 2 or even 3 meetings that I would like to get to and can't. So I think that's one thing. Yeah, it is.
Just a little bit, speak a little bit closer to the mic.
All right, let me know if I start. Is that good? Okay. So this is a 3-inch mic, everybody. I think the other thing we need to do is right now the way the processes are designed, they're kind of siloed. We're doing them one by one, and I'm a big advocate for comprehensive planning. The 2020 did a great job of visioning, but it was a very high-level effort. I think what we need to do now is to bring that level down, not quite to where we're looking at the future focus areas, but that really starts talking about specifics, things we need in town, like exactly how we think our commercial tax base needs to develop, what kind of population we're planning for, where we're planning to put them, what kind of housing they'll need. And then we need to look at all the different future focus areas and say, okay, where are the best places that we can meet those needs? So, and kind of assign those over into each different future focus area. So I don't think we've figured out how to do that yet. I hate to add one more process to the whole future focus area process, but I think that's a really, really important thing that the town has not addressed yet. So right now we want to run the risk with doing things individually that say we wouldn't meet our housing needs, or we would way overbuild our housing needs. So I think that's something that we need to look at, and we need to get right. Thank you.
Phyllis?
I really have a follow-up question that I think I would like to address to the candidates that have either been on the council or on the planning commission, George, Sally, Ed, basically, which is what have been others, perhaps Amy, what have been the results of other small area plans, task force, etc., that have been sponsored by the town in the past? I have an impression, and I may be completely mistaken, that in fact there hasn't been good follow-through. So we've invested a lot of effort in those plans, and but what has come through in reality differs quite substantially from what those task forces and planning committees at the neighborhood level determined. So I'd like to hear about what have been some of the successes or some of the accomplishments of other small area plans.
Since we didn't have any follow-up to the first question, why don't we let all four of those individuals take a minute to do that? Amy?
One that I'm familiar with is the Northern Area Task Force report that got done, and I know that a lot of the recommendations that were in that report have not been followed through for one reason or another. So it's important to remember that these plans are simply recommendations to council. They're made as part of the comprehensive plan, but unless council insists that they're followed and votes accordingly, they don't have force of ordinance. Now, if we do change our system and we experiment in some ways using form-based coding for these plans and we actually put them into ordinance, then it's enforceable, but otherwise it's a recommendation to council.
Sally?
I think there's some truth to the fact that some plans don't get followed up on. One that I can think of is there's a downtown small area plan that dates to more than 10 years ago that not much traction ever got made on. On the other hand, there's the Rogers Road small area plan. The mayor was on that committee. I was not, but several council members were, and that plan is very much alive and well, and a cooperative venture with the county of Carrboro that we're now trying to work into the next phase. So I do think that it is very true that the plan has to have the consistent advocacy and championship of council members and community members to keep it alive.
The previous three have mentioned not all the small area plans in recent years, I would cite, and Sally's right. Rogers Road is a great example of something which I didn't see in other jurisdictions where I watched small area planning, which is council members taking on a plan and championing it and carrying through. I think because of the social justice aspect of Rogers Road, that wasn't something going away, that it really ramped it up. The one that we will be talking about, I'm sure the public will talk about it at some point this fall, is the one that's, in a way, the subject of the Obi Creek Compass Committee process, which is the quite aged Southern Area Plan, which had a specific commitment in it, which the potential developer of Obi Creek acknowledged. They really haven't been through a process about how to evaluate how to update that plan or whether to just remove it altogether.
And I was going to mention also the Southern Area Plan where Obi Creek is being proposed now. That was done about 20 years ago, and I think The nature is that Chapel Hill is undergoing a lot of changes now, and obviously in certain situations we have to revisit and look at what was proposed 20 years ago. Is it appropriate for the conditions that exist now? And those are not only economically changing conditions, but changing demographics in our town. So I think in some cases where these plans were put into place a long time ago, there may be a need to revisit them.
Thank you. The next question is for Lauren Hintz. Chapel Hill is revising its land use management ordinances, which govern how we build and what we protect. Yeah, you were pointing that at this. Yeah, that's okay. I thought it was me. Okay, let me start that again. Chapel Hill is revising its land use management ordinances, which govern how we build and what we protect. Given the town's interest in putting increased density in many areas, do you think our current ordinances for wildlife protection, stream buffers, tree canopy, and regulations affecting air and water pollutants and volume of stormwater into our waterways are adequate?
I think before any of us can answer that question, we have to be aware of the constraints of the new legislation with the House Bill 74, which is making it a lot more difficult to do a lot of changes that need to be done. I was involved in some of the original LUMO rules, and I think there's a lot of very good things in there. Obviously, this past summer where we had a major rainstorm and a huge amount of flooding, we need to look at better ways of retaining stormwater. One thing which I'd like us to think about is giving homeowners a bonus if they were to install rain gardens or green roofs or things like that. That would slow down some stuff. I think it's really important because of the legislation that we look very carefully how we revise stuff. For example, I want to make sure that we maintain the large buffers that we have, which are a little bit larger than, for example, the Jordan Lake rules have. The other issue is more of a developer's point, is it is complicated to enforce them. I know staff has complained about some uncertainties, and if it's not clear what the rules are, then of course it's even difficult to enforce. And lastly, since so much of our land is single homes, we need to look carefully at how do we regulate stormwater on single residential places.
That's the follow-up for that one. Yes, Bob?
And I don't know to whom I should direct this, but I'll make it a general question. There's a lot of things that you mentioned. What can local government do and implement successfully, given some of the constraints of House Bill 74 and some of the issues that are ongoing in government? And again,
someone else?
I'd like to talk.
Okay, Lauren, why don't you take a minute and then, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's probably a lawyer's answer, lawyer's question rather. My understanding is that if we do changes, it would have to be unanimous from the town council, and that may be very difficult to do. It looks to me like the legislation is very restrictive. In terms of stormwater management, the types of things that we can require, I think there's a lot of room for that. I understand there's a lot of new techniques to use to trap and slow down stormwater, which could be required independent of state legislation.
If I could, I'd like to hear from somebody else too. Is that legal?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's Ed answer, and then somebody else wants to take it.
I was part of a statewide meeting of local officials today where 90 minutes was spent on the legislation Lawrence referred to. And one thing we all established is nothing retroactive about it. So everything we have in place can survive unless there's some other reason we get rid of it. And that the whole provision sunsets, goes away in 1 year less 1 day. In the meantime, some members of the General Assembly realize they have to figure out what it actually means for local governments, because some members of the General Assembly actually think we ought to be able to approve our ordinances. So that's, in terms of the state picture, that's what it is. I think there are changes we can make that don't cross the bar that that law presents, and they can probably be worked out through the LUMA revisions. And I'm grateful to citizens who are talking to me and working with me on tracking how LUMA gets revised. It's really worth your doing.
Maureen, you want to take a minute?
I think town council can do a lot that is not legislated or through ordinances. If you look at, we have incredible brain power. And for example, composting. If we try to mandate an ordinance that everybody had to compost, people would be up in arms. But yet, through our recycling program, we sell these barrels and they're gone. By the time you get there, when they sell them to purchase one, they're gone. And through education and helping people and giving them opportunities to buy into innovative practices, Lauren mentioned rooftop gardens and all kinds of technologies that the town can encourage and help promote. We can do a lot that we're not doing. We can't legislate everything.
Thank you. One more.
Oh, I turned it off, sorry.
In terms of the stormwater, I think if we look at the flood of June 30th, that most of where that flooding occurred was not where there's new development, where our ordinances, I think, are working for the most part. Our current ordinances restrict the amount of stormwater that can go off-site, can't be any more than what was there prior to development. I think Lauren pointed out, it's the existing development. We need to figure out a way how we can control over existing development. Certainly there was no new development that flooded Town Hall. It was coming from existing property. So I think we need to figure out, and that has to be a voluntary thing, because I don't think we're going to go and tell homeowners that they have to start redoing their property. But I think people are aware now that flooding off-site is a very significant factor. And I think if we have an educational program to get people looking at ways that they can do things themselves, then I think that will be successful.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. This is for Gary Kahn. The new urbanism has become a popular concept. How would you define it, and would you apply this idea to areas that are being redeveloped as opposed to being designed from scratch, such as Southern Village?
Well, as a Southern Village resident and one who's attended plenty of focus meetings, it is a very high priority among citizens of Chapel Hill. Right now there's a debate going on between whether they want high density, no density. Personally speaking, you know, it's a very rough issue to address because there are reasons for both. And I personally feel that each area has to plan it. I personally think that the high-density effort should be addressed more towards the downtown area. There are parts of town that probably should be somewhat in the middle, maybe 4 or 5 stories. Some parts of town that should be maybe only 2 or 3 stories. So it's a very difficult issue right now, and I've gone through all these meetings, and I know that it concerns the mayor and the town council, and they're pretty much addressing each issue for what, you know, on its merit, you know, community. That's the purpose of the 2020 concept.
Follow-up question? Phyllis?
Is it on? Okay. The question I have really is a follow-up question about the cost of density, and it's a two-part question. What consideration has there been given to the additional cost of density in the town, and how would that be paid for? Since we know frequently that density is not something that actually pays for itself. yourself when we talk about residential housing. And the second part of that is, what is motivating the density discussion? Why are we talking about density? Are we talking about the need to house existing residents of Chapel Hill, the need to house new residents of Chapel Hill, and what is the socioeconomic breakdown? So what's the motivation behind the discussion of density and the push towards density, at least by part of the community? And secondly, what are the costs and benefits of density? You can choose.
Okay. Amy, you'll get a second question, but then I need to get some other folks answering.
Well, I think part of the impetus for density in Chapel Hill comes from a decision that was made long ago that gave us our rural buffer and our urban services boundary. So that as we're a very desirable place to live, and unless we're going to close the door and say we don't grow anymore, that means that we do need to do infill, and we will need to become a denser place unless we decide that we want to breach that rural boundary. So I think that's one of the things that's leading us to think we need to think about density solutions, since we decided not to do sprawl. So I think that's part of it. And I just have a question for you. When you say that density, especially residential density, doesn't pay for itself, is that an issue at the school's cost, or is it the infrastructure, or?
Yeah, there are costs associated with density, and we need to know what they are, and we need to know who is going to pay for those. And it's the infrastructure, it's schools, it's town services, it's policemen, it's firemen, there are a lot of ways, and considering that the tax rate is already high on the average Chapel Hill citizen, the question then becomes, how is this density going to be financed?
I'm wondering whether, as our youngest panel member, DC, would like to add something to population growth.
Cool. All right. I mean, I feel like it's kind of a catch-22 when it comes to development for a town. I mean, you can build up, but you can also build out, but the out situation causes a lot of urban sprawl. I mean, I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, which is the 5th worst urban sprawl area in the country. So we decided to build out and continue to build out, and I believe that it's much more efficient, and you can keep those town services compact, so you don't have to spend more money stretching that development out and out towards our rural buffer and otherwise. It's also more conducive to stronger communities if you build closer together, I feel, and mixed income communities for that matter. I feel like if we're going to develop at all, we need to consider all socioeconomic backgrounds in terms of our improvement of Chapel Hill's, I guess, development.
Sal?
Nationwide, two of the strongest advocates for urbanism and compact development are the Sierra Club and the National Resources Defense Council. And I would commend to you the NRDC's blogger Kay Benfield, who talks about the evolution of the thinking of new urbanism towards something that's really more like what we're calling form-based code. It's just about what things look like, to paying attention to context and the need for affordability and walkability and things like that. To the density question, some of you may have seen or heard about a presentation that the Chamber sponsored by a man from Asheville not long ago, Joe Minozzi, who talked about the dramatically increased tax value that comes from dense development. So it's obvious when you think about it. You go over and when you get more tax values, especially if the building is in a wealthy urban community. Thank you.
By the way, you're all doing a great time. Lauren, why don't we move on to the next one, and we'll give you another chance later. Okay. Next question is, in fact, for Sally Green. Chapel Hill recently suffered the impacts of severe flooding, which causes of flooding are within our control, and what would you recommend that the town do to protect our homes and the health of our waterways?
As has already been indicated, one cause of our flooding is bad stormwater control practices that date from 40 years ago, and more. And one of the ways that we can alleviate that or try to turn that around has not been mentioned, but I thought of it earlier in the earlier question. The council heard last night a presentation about the emphasis Fordham area and the plans that our staff is working on to create a stormwater district, which would, we would do this not through ordinance, but through the powers that we may be able to gain to create a special tax base, so there's special tax levied on new developments there, and they would in turn pay into a fund for stormwater development and maintenance. And what we're talking about doing is actually removing some of those culverts there in that area that cause a lot of problems when the water really backs up, and creating a more efficient basin-based, rainwater type-based system that will actually make the place better than it was. And the development that we're talking about there is very vertical, and so there's actually less land disturbed in the end than there is now. So that's one concrete way.
Bob, do you have a follow-up?
Again, I don't know to whom this should be directed. The part of the stormwater management that is seldom considered, and you mentioned it just a minute ago, are downstream boundaries. What, and again, I don't know who, what can be done to improve those downstream boundaries? A lot of the talk talks about what happens upslope or on the upgrading side of the stormwater system. What can be done on the downgrading side? You talked about it very, very briefly. Are there other things that can be done?
Gary? And then Paul, perhaps?
Yeah, this is a very serious issue, and it came up at one recent meeting that I attended. A person at a recent community meeting, I should say Central West, announced his disgusting feelings about the public library recently, how the storm problem was there. And one of my proposals, I think, is any future development, there should be some kind of agreement or warranty, because the Chapel Hill Library is under warranty. It should be after a certain period of time. I think the person who designed the building, if any kind of flooding comes along, I think they should be accountable for it, and therefore all new construction should be under kind of warranty to help solve the sewage problem.
Paul?
Hello. Is this proven I'm awake? I'm personally not afraid of asking experts what the answer to your question is, because I don't know what the answer is, but I would not be afraid to ask some experts, because I know there's an answer and there's a solution. We definitely need more stringent stormwater control. I mean, that's obvious. You don't have to be a genius to realize that. You see water to here for cars. I can remember as a kid, I don't run out of time probably, but I can remember as a kid at Thomas Apartments, we used to play in this creek down there, and I don't even know if it exists anymore, so that's a very important question that we do need to preserve.
DC?
Okay, so I feel like we definitely need to invest in a redoing of our infrastructure, particularly permeable sidewalks and permeable roads. Cities like Olympia, Washington have invested in that, and you set up different types of filtration systems depending on the type of soil that you have around Chapel Hill. I do not know if all of Chapel Hill's soil is the same, so we would have to assess that as well. However, if we do incorporate that into particular downstream areas, we would be able to diminish that situation with stormwater flooding. And not only do you decrease the overall runoff, which would cause these cars to have that much water around them when we do have serious storms, you will diminish the amount of copper, the amount of zinc, the amount of other pollutants that all of our vehicles and other plants and otherwise would put into our stormwater when we do have those serious rain showers. So it will cost to redo the infrastructure, but in the end, it will benefit us a lot more when it comes to diminishing flooding.
You might want to save your captain for the next one. Okay, thanks. The next question is for Ed Harrison. The town has hired a consultant to revise the town's land use ordinances. And the consultant is recommending form-based code, or the town is recommending, I don't know who's recommending that. Can you provide some explanation of what this is so the audience understands? Do you support this approach? And what do you see as its strengths and weaknesses? That's a little multi-part.
This is in 2 minutes.
Yeah, side of turf.
The consultant's recommending it. The council has never formally endorsed the approach, although we've invited them to keep talking about it. We had a great work session with them. Form-based code is, as someone else is focused very much on appearance without necessarily all the contextual criteria to look at in development analysis. You assume that a district or an area is committed to being built in form-based code. You're not looking at the particular uses. You're looking at what the buildings look like. And there are places, I mean, the place I've highlighted, Rosemary Street, West Rosemary Street, particularly with all the potential there, somewhere I think form-based code would work well. What I've learned from talking to people in Durham where it's already being done is that we need lots of different forms for developers to choose from, for people to talk to them about, and we need very specific language about it too. But it's something we're still talking about, and the process has been slowed down, and you have until November 19th to comment toward the planning board or to the council. And I think it's something that will work in certain places. I don't advocate it right now for the whole Essex Forum District, but it could end up being used there eventually, but I think we need to do it step by step. But it is something that can be appealing both to developers and to people who live around it.
So you did it. Tish?
From what I've seen in the discussion on form-based codes, what it doesn't include is the ability to talk about affordable housing. So if you're, in Ephesus Church area, you're dealing with more development of retail and commercial property, it sounds like, but also included in there is housing. So how can you make sure that affordable housing is used in the discussion of form-based codes?
I'd like to answer that.
Okay.
Well, before form-based code is put in anywhere, there has to be a rezoning. Actually, for the Ephesus Forum area, it turns out there have to be a number of them to reach the new zones. And it's in that process right now that we see the council being able to ask for affordable housing as a component of what people are bringing forward. We're still, again, there are a lot of questions to be answered about it, and the consultant may not be the person to do it, though he certainly is making enough money to suggest them. But I think that because there's rezoning, which to me is a really major action, the developer doesn't have a right to it, but it is something to get Ephesus Forum going, we would have to do, and we will at a certain point. The council has to get in early as part of the discussion of rezoning and ask for important community values like affordable housing. Did it?
Sally?
Well, I really wish I had more time than 1 minute for this. Just returned from an affordable housing conference in Atlanta where this question came up. Tish, it's a great question. I've had serious doubts about whether you can actually require someone who is building into a form-based code zone that's already created to produce affordable housing. The answer I got from some experts there is you cannot. So it dictates the form, and the quote of an expert from Florida who I really respect, once you set the form-based code in place and you ask somebody to build, you have given away the store when it comes to affordable housing. But I can support it in an area like Ephesus because we have simultaneous processes with this tax credit rental project that the council looked at for the first time Monday night. And there's, we're hearing another affordable project that is going to come to us in that zone. So if we know we have those two projects, then I think that the form-based code has advantages for other reasons.
Maria?
Thank you. And I think, looking at what we already expect in affordable housing for that area, it is significant. So I think form-based code can help us develop what is right now an eyesore. It's a wasteland, and businesses go broke, and you feel this is not the Chapel Hill we want. When you go into Rams Plaza, it's kind of pathetic. But people are not going to invest millions and millions of dollars if there's not a process that guarantees, first of all, reasonable approval time, and secondly, that there will be other developments around so that people will buy the stuff they're building. If, nobody's going to go through the process and develop one little piece of land if the neighboring land is going to be vacant for years. So I think unless we do it together, we're not going to get it done.
Amy, go ahead.
When I talked to the Einsweiler about the form-based coding issues, he's the consultant who's doing it. In his talks, he has said that it's very rare for a community to implement pure form-based coding. And in fact, what he's suggesting at Ephesus Fordham, I know, is at least in part a hybrid, because it does specify mixed uses. It's not just the building looks like this and you can put anything you want into it. He does have uses in there. So Sally, I don't know, when you were at that conference, did they talk about, was that just a pure form-based code that you couldn't do the affordable housing in, or?
Well, I think we're talking about different things. You can say what kinds of uses you want there, but you can't say to the developer, oh, you can build this many square feet of housing and 15% of them have to be affordable. There's no leverage left at that point. You could have a optional one where it says, we'll give you even more density if you'll build affordable housing. That would be voluntary, but the experience of Miami and I asked Lee this question, the experience that, he confirmed that nobody voluntary requests for affordable housing in a form-based code, nobody ever steps up and says, I want to do that.
Thanks.
Lauren?
I wanted to emphasize what was shown to council at the special, at their work meeting, is a chart was presented about what things form-based code you can't do with it. And it's a list of 6 items I won't repeat. One, of course, is affordable housing. I do think what everyone needs to decide in the audience is whether we want to apply form-based code to one neighborhood, which personally I think makes sense, the Ephesus Fordham Boulevard, or apply it other places. I don't think it necessarily has to be applied to new urbanism at the other areas. From everything I've heard, I suspect you'd want it just to be at most 1 or 2 spots.
Last question. Last response.
What I'm hearing is that form-based code won't work for affordable housing because we can't dictate it. And I don't think dictating to developers that they have to do affordable housing is working now. I mean, what they do is they build their affordable housing and then they jack up the price of the market rate housing, which in Chapel Hill is driving the affordability level higher, not lower. So I think I heard both in the Sustainable Visioning Task Force and in Chapel Hill 2020, the community says they want more affordable housing. I think if we need more affordable housing, if we want more affordable housing, we have to commit to it as a community and figure out how to do it. And I think the public-private partnership that's being discussed now is the way to do it, not forcing developers, because that hasn't worked.
Interesting that you say that. The next question is for Maria Palmer. And it is, specifically, what would you recommend the town do to provide workforce and affordable rentals? Honestly, I didn't know it was going to go this way.
And I apologize that my answers are not there. I try to call my husband and get him to print them and bring them, but he's at the church at a presentation, so I will get them. Something happened. Anyway, the partnership that George mentioned, I think is the way to go, and I appreciate what Sally has been doing, working for that. And if elected, I look forward to working with the folks that have already gotten a head start. I also think we need to push the university to build more workforce housing, perhaps in Carolina North. And I mentioned that at the last Carolina North report, and that was actually welcomed by Bruce, one of the leaders in the, and he said he's in the last Land Trust Conservancy group, and he's actually a board member, and he said he would support that. So I agree with George. I don't think it's working very well the way we're doing it, although I think the world of Robert Downing, and I think that's working well, what he's doing, and support a continuation. We just have to do everything. And the questionnaire says, do we have to do A, B, or C? I think private, this, that, and I said we have to do everything. We can't just do, there's not one solution. There are multiple solutions, and we have to work on all fronts.
Tish?
I think we have to have a little bit of an explanation of what workforce housing is and affordable housing is, because when we have been on the task force, we have talked about people making 80% of the median income and below that to talk about affordable housing. And workforce housing is 100 to 120% of median income. There's a significant difference that exists in the two areas. So the question is, in talking about development of affordable housing, in using new regulations, how do we guarantee that we can work with developers on promoting affordable rentals as well as affordable housing that includes workforce housing and includes affordability for other individuals? I'll just make one other comment. Currently, we have 60% of the individuals that are in public housing in Chapel Hill work for the hospital or the university. Those are some of the people that need to be out of public housing and into some type of affordable housing to transition out of there.
And Eric?
My answer to that is, we have a system right now that provides the developer to take care of affordable housing, and overall I think that has failed miserably. And the town council and I is going through several steps to develop their own public housing for the low income and senior citizens of our community. And I think that is a step in the right direction. I think it's come to the point where you can't rely on the developer, to do affordable housing. The town government has to take that responsibility.
Maria, again?
I do thank you for the clarification, because that's exactly what I meant about UNC taking and the hospital taking responsibility for the people they employ. And for me, when I say work for housing, I mean if you work in Chapel Hill, you need to be able to afford to live in Chapel Hill. My husband's a school teacher. We couldn't buy our home today. We bought it 17 years ago. And it's doubled in price, and right now we can't even afford the taxes with me working part-time. So I think Chapel Hill has a problem of we don't have the supply of housing for the people who work here. And our roads are super congested because school teachers and the people who work here have to live in Durham and Chatham and Alamance and Hillsborough and Mebane. And if we had enough housing, our congestion problem would diminish significantly.
Casey?
Okay, so from what I've heard, it just seems like there's not a lot of energy behind a lot of the candidates or the council to push developers or find developers that are interested in offering affordable housing. To my knowledge, you can offer it briefly, but if the person that was eligible for the affordable housing moves out, you're able to jack the prices up to someone else. So that squeezes out someone else that happens to be of a low socioeconomic status. Considering that nearly one out of every 4 persons in Chapel Hill are below the poverty line, which a number of that is students, but a number of it isn't. And the poverty line is $11,490. So I don't think you can make a lot, or you can afford a lot of things with $11,490 if you have a family. And in order for us to be able to actually keep those people here, who not only bring diversity, but can bring new ideas and hard work and stay in Chapel Hill, we have to find ways to keep or to expand our affordable housing, not only for people already in the workforce, but for the students at UNC. They may want to stay here, but if they are squeezed out because of the development jacking up market rates, then we're not going to get those new ideas.
I've got a couple people who haven't said much, and I'd like to hear from them. So Lauren and Paul, if you'd like to take this.
Are we talking about affordable housing?
Yeah, if you'd like to decline, that's okay.
I just have a quick idea on affordable housing. There's something new that's come out. It's called minimalism with housing. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not. But for one, I would be happy living in like a minimalist house. And maybe we can have a minimalist housing development where the plots are small, a developer could still make money. But that's the way I think. It sounds to me to be a radical idea, but it could possibly function.
All right, go ahead.
I think unfortunately the reality is that the market determines the very high prices, and our relatively low amount of commercial space, property, and the tremendous number of services that we have require the high taxes that we pay. And unless we're going to do a dramatic change in our city, that's not going to change very much. I think we can, we're fighting just the whole market forces, which, given our society, is a major issue. I think one thing which can happen is that as we hopefully increase some revenues, maybe that can be used to go towards housing. I think what Maria said and others have said about workforce housing is getting not only the university and hospital, but try to get the school system to also look at that.
Phyllis?
I have a question. You could throw it to anyone you want, but as an economist, the question of affordable housing really boils down to people don't have sufficient income. And so one of the questions is, have we looked at other ways of tackling this issue? Because the world over, we know from experience of over 50 or 60 years that public supported housing and even public incentivized housing does not work. It simply does not work. And in fact, what people have been doing for poverty all over the world now, the most popular program are conditional cash transfers, where you actually try to augment the incomes and buying power of your poorest citizens and of the working class poor, because that generates more economic activity and it flows through the society rather than using very scarce funds on things that don't work. So I'm wondering if anybody in council has looked at other issues or other ways we could tackle the very same problem.
So I have 2 comments. One, Sally, you can go ahead and take this for 1 minute, and then we're going to move on. And then Phyllis, you and Tish have to have coffee.
Well,
ahead.
perhaps I'd like to respond with Phyllis, because I've recommended a book called Public Housing That Worked. which is about the history of public housing in New York City. And granted, we're not New York City. I'm not saying we're New York City. I'm not saying it should be New York City. But it is the story of long-term, consistent investment in public housing as a way over time to make it work. And there are many problems with New York, but that is a very excellent book. There are ways that we can aggressively work better to move people out of public housing. Again, at this conference I was just at, there was a fabulous nonprofit that works very closely with residents of public housing, doing kind of what our Community Empowerment Fund here does, financial counseling, career counseling, job counseling, really trying to use the system that exists under HUD rules to allow people to build escrow to move out of public housing into their home. You can make public housing work.
Thank you. And honestly, I didn't know it was going to flow this nicely. Paul, the next question is for you. You awake over there? Listen up. While the town benefits a great deal from the presence of UNC, it also imposes some burdens on the community. How will you further the town-gown relationship to address important issues such as employee and student housing needs, as well as public transportation?
Housing needs and public transportation. First of all, I think there needs to be an open dialogue, and I think there is currently an open dialogue with UNC. They give a lot of money from the bus system, which made the bus system fare-free, which I think is great. I was actually just checking this with Dwight Bassett, because a lot of times UNC does not pay taxes, which is a big problem as a public institution. But some of the new buildings they've done, medical buildings, they are paying taxes. So I think if there's an opportunity for UNC to pay tax, then I think they should. They're probably going to be very happy about that. But I think that would help the town. And then they should be responsible for building more student housing if they can.
George?
I think we have a love-hate relationship with the university. I mean, if you ask people why they moved to Chapel Hill, a lot of people say they moved here because of the university, because of the culture it provides, because of the arts, and actually because of the vitality of having young people around. But then we know that there's the issue of not gaining tax from a lot of the property. I think Carolina North was a good step in the right direction. I think the fact that they were planning on having businesses build there that would generate taxes is the right thing to do. I'm disappointed that it hasn't moved more quickly. I think I'm disappointed that they're waiting for the law school to get there. I think the town needs to encourage them, needs to help them go out and find businesses that are willing to locate there. I don't think we can stand idly by and just say, we'll wait till it happens. We have the opportunity there to get great investment in Chapel Hill and bring jobs that would provide perhaps a higher income, so housing would be more affordable. But we can't just wait for it to happen. We need to go out and seek new businesses for Chapel Hill, and that provides a great area for it.
You see?
Okay, so of all the candidates here, I'm pretty sure I ride the buses more than anyone. So this is really, really near and dear to me. I know that the system does usually cater to students, which is understandable, but there are a lot of folks in Chapel Hill that do need to have access to work and not just the regular 8 to 5 Monday through Fridays. So I would much rather see versus this talk of, I think, a light rail system that may have a few miles in Orange County, rather than putting any money to something like that. It's like putting the cart before the horse to me. We'd be better off putting the funds into expanding our system, which would diminish the traffic that we have on 15, 501, and 54. If the buses went more frequently and people are in, say, Colony Woods, Epsis Fordham area, or Colony Lake or anything of that nature, they'll ride the bus more frequently, diminishing traffic, diminishing pollution, all of those things. It's really important that we go that route because mass transit will help us in diminishing our carbon footprint and is a big part of how we're going to actually make Chapel Hill develop.
It's okay if I address the second part about transit. I'm real engaged in transit. Jim Ward, sitting here, and I are along the town in the partners with UNC along the Triangle Transit Board. It's something that apparently isn't well understood in Chapel Hill, just cited by DC, is that what the light rail is intended to do as it comes into Chapel Hill is to replace all the buses in the NC-54 corridor, which are then available to go somewhere else. And apparently, I mean, I just want to let you know that's the idea of this. It already qualifies for a rail line, and that's some years off. We also, any of you who supported the half-cent transit sales tax in 2012, the transit system is gradually developing plans on how to spend that. We're adding back in night service and weekend service, which we had to cut later, further back.
Thank you. Tish?
I'd like to follow up on the light rail, if I may. I was recently at the Wake County meeting where the representative from all of the mayors in Wake County said that they do not support the light rail program for Wake County, and they're bringing in experts to talk about alternative plans. If Wake County is not in the light rail plan, it appears that we don't have the population, nor will we have the ability to get state funding and federal funding. So how, if that occurs, how do we then redirect the funds from TA to be used in our community?
Anyone other than Ed? Let's let Lauren take it.
If it's true all the mayors oppose it, I think that's very sad. I mean, historically, mayors in Wake County have supported mass transit and have supported light rail, so that may be a political issue. Obviously, if that whole big plan falls apart, then the fallback is that funds can be used for bus service. But, you know, one of the biggest issues in this region is getting from Orange County to Durham County to Wake County to the airport and so forth. So we need a interregional transit system.
Thank you. And the last question is for DC, and actually this follows on to the last one. Anyway, Chapel Hill Transit is facing challenges due to the decentralization of UNC healthcare, town commercial areas, and the loss of funding at the state and federal level. How will the town absorb the increasing costs of service? What actions do you recommend to both improve service and ensure a fiscally sustainable future?
Hello, okay. So, as I said, I mean, if, as was mentioned, the mayors aren't even in support of this light rail system, why are we even bothering? I mean, I would much rather see the money that in Chapel Hill, Orange County, whoever is going to fund this section of the light rail system go into bus service. I know that in terms of the weekends, I'd like to see an increase of weekend service because of the people that don't work 8 to 5s. So perhaps providing morning service, midday service, evening service, or what have you, so people can get to and from work. As for the cost, to absorb the cost, and we're going to have to work on that. We're going to have to find a way, because everyone that rides because it's free, rides because they need a way to get to work. I know that there was an issue about hospital workers getting out to Easttown because the bus didn't run as early as it needed to be. We need to look at the most efficient ways to set up times for bus routes and who needs the most service at a given time in the day, and continue to augment that. And I think the more we do that, the better we'll be in terms of the money that we do have to actually improve the transit system. But as I said, including weekend service, or improving weekend service for people that don't work 8 to 5s will be really important. Yeah, and just talking to the drivers too, I think that incorporating the drivers' opinions on what's happening in the transit system as well. A lot of people don't like the staggered shifts that a lot of the drivers are working. They'd rather work straight 8 hours because you're not paid for those middle 4 hours. We need to find ways to improve driver morale and just all sorts of stuff. It's a multi-tiered thing, and considering mass transit is one of my favorite things, I'm really dedicated to actually trying to find ways to improve it.
Maria?
I worked hard to get the transit tax passed so that we can have better public transportation and fund mass transit. I think, like Lauren and some other people here, I think it would be a shame if things don't work out, because we do, the triangle is really interconnected and interdependent. But there are alternatives. If the light rail doesn't work, we can, and we have considered these designated bus routes through mass transit that is on, rather than on light rail, on those accordion buses. And other cities have it, and it's very effective. So I know we'll figure it out. One way or another, we have to do something, because that corridor 54, it can't continue. So we'll make it work.
Okay, let's see. Evening it out, I have, if Gary or Paul wants to add to this, they get first dibs.
There's one thing I just want to add. It's probably not going to be a very popular thought, but being originally from New York, there's a little railroad called the Long Island Railroad, and the railroad actually lost money. And at this point, I'm against light rail right now. It should be focused more on the bus transportation system until we get like 6 million people or 4 or 5 million people. I think that's when we should really start seriously talking about light rail. Up to that point, I don't think it shouldn't even be an issue. Just try to improve the present bus system right now.
Paul, you want to add something?
I do. I would like to add, yes. I think if you don't plan enough in advance for light rail, by the time you have too many people, there's not going to be a place to put it, because nobody's going to want, like in Chicago, where you have your windows right here and the L is right next to the window. So I think you really do need to plan way ahead for light rail. And from what I've understood, is the most traffic is between Chapel Hill and Durham. And so even if the Raleigh mayors don't go along, maybe it still could be used between Chapel Hill and Durham. So that's my thought.
We are now at 8:30, so I'd like to give you all your last question, and it's a simple one. The question for each of you is, what is the question you wished you had been asked? You can ask it and answer it. Okay, and we were going to take 1 minute for that, and let's give them a minute and 15. How's that? 15 seconds for the question and a minute to answer it. Okay. Do we have a volunteer to go first? George.
I wish I had been asked what my highest priorities were, because my highest priority first is to develop a more clear, develop transparency and clarity in the design and review process. I think that we need to make it clear to the citizens and applicants what we want, where we want it, what we want it to look like. And I think we need to revise the review process so that any applicant gets an up or down answer within a year. I think it's crazy to see projects go on 2, 3, 4 years without an answer. It taxes the citizens and the public. The second thing I would want to do is encourage new businesses in Chapel Hill. I think we need to identify what businesses we need, how they can complement and synergize with those that we have. We don't need more pizza parlors on Franklin Street. And we need to go out and actively recruit those businesses. The third thing is I think we need to work better with our neighbor municipalities, including the university. We need to identify where we can share resources and find cost savings.
Thank you. Next. Sally?
I too would like to answer the question of what my priorities are. And the first one is about a topic we discussed, is affordable rental housing. As some of you know, my colleague Donna Bell and I have co-chaired a council mayor's committee on that subject, and Tish has been part of that. And our committee report is coming to council on October 16th, so mark your calendar. We've got a lot of exciting ideas, and the tax credit project is the first of those. My second priority is, one of the focus areas is downtown, and there's an activity going on to think about really jump-starting the process of turning downtown into a vibrant and attractive cultural arts district. There's a grant writing program that the Downtown Partnership is involved in right now. I want to be a council champion on that. There can be others, but I really want to embrace downtown. And finally, something that I know is near and dear to all of you, I want to continue to approach these very large projects, focus areas and development projects in a careful way that ensures that all of our interests are balanced as we go forward.
Thank you. Next volunteer. Gary?
Can you repeat the question again? I'm getting two different answers.
Okay. The question simply is, what question did you wish you had been asked?
Okay, that's
So
what
you ask it and answer it.
That's what I thought I
And if
heard.
you
But
want to continue with the priorities.
no,
that's-
I want to get away from that.
Okay.
The question I really wish that came up was, in the previous elections, and in this current one, everybody talks about their political experience, what they've done for the town. And basically, it's been the same old, I was on the commissions, I was on the advisory boards, and it was well done, but I think there should be a change. Somebody should ask me, well, haven't been on any of the town, boards or advisory boards. What makes me, that I want to run? And the fact is, for the last 2.5 years, I've been hanging around the mayor and the town council, voicing my opinion, whether it's good or bad, and I basically feel I know what's going on. And a few issues did come up where none of my other candidates weren't. The cell phone ban came up. I was very vocal in favor of it. The Yates building situation, I called for a private investigator, and that obviously didn't happen. More recently, the sign from the Church of Revitalization came up, and overall I said I wasn't in favor of it or against it or in favor of it, but it was overall politically incorrect, and the mayor and the town council sort of respected my point of view, and they passed an option, which I'm very happy that they did, and I feel that I could offer a lot more to this town than just being, quote, old stuff, member of the town advisory board. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
I guess the question which I wish we'd all been asked is, how can we do better in getting citizen input? I've gone to a lot of the meetings, and I've gone to meetings over the years on different advisory boards that I did serve on. But I think I'm a good listener, and I'm good at analyzing a lot of different opinions. I also hope everyone recognizes the fact that we will not agree on everything, and it's just important to listen to the different opinions. And I know that the 2020 actually has outlined a process for communicating and coming to opinions. And one phrase is consensus, but I don't think it's a Quaker consensus. It's more just discussing and making a decision.
Okay. Somebody from this table, Amy?
The question that I wish I had been asked is to talk about the revisions that are planned to our planning process in town and how I think those should be accommodated. As some of you may know, I'm a big fan of citizen participation in planning upfront with small area plans. I think that that's a very, very important thing, to let citizens have a chance to weigh in at the very beginning of the process. By the time a project has gone through a lot of the approvals and a lot of the boards and things, and people really understand that it's coming up, it's too late to have important impacts on it. So I think that, first of all, I would like to see the town do more of the future focus area planning that we've done. I think that's a great thing. We're also, as we talk about the form-based coding, that actually implies changes to our development review process, and in some states that just winds up being sort of an administrative checkoff. If a project meets all of the requirements, town staff approves it, and it goes forward, there's no public hearing, there's no council hearing. And I hope that as we go forward, that we work out some mechanism that will allow for public input at the end of that process also.
Thanks. DC?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment before I do the question bit. This week I already submitted a petition to the council about a solution to the Estes Park service regarding Chapel Hill Transit, so that's how important mass transit is to me. But in terms of questions, I guess priorities / what makes me unique about all the candidates here, and the main thing is that my goal is to make Chapel Hill a town with zero tolerance for sexual and domestic violence. I think considering everything that happened last year on the UNC campus and even throughout the town, we have to find a way to make this town an environment where survivors of any sort of domestic or sexual trauma feel like they'll receive justice, feel like they'll receive the support that they need in times of need and healing. And we don't even have a domestic violence shelter here. The closest one is in Durham. Not everyone can get to Durham. When it comes to domestic violence protection orders, you have to go to the clerk of the court in Hillsborough, but not everyone can get out of Hillsborough because there's very limited transit out there. And the fact of the matter is you can't, usually a lot of magistrates give out domestic violence protection orders, but our magistrate's office is only open on Wednesdays. So there's so many things that we have to work on to make this environment a lot stronger. And that's what I want to do.
Next. Paul?
I think the question I would have liked to have been asked is what is the most important trait or traits for council members? And to me, that is listening to what the people want. Of course, I have lots of ideas myself, but it's really what do the people want, and is there an open dialogue between the people and the council members? I know Durham is doing a pilot project, I think it's called Peak Democracy or something like that, and it doesn't cost the town anything, and it gets a lot of input from the community, which I think is very important. We can also talk about what I'd like to see in Chapel Hill, just asking random people, more parks. There seems to be a shortage of parks in Chapel Hill. I'd love to have a connected greenway system, but again, to me, the most important thing is what do the people want?
Maria, I think you're going to wind it up for us.
I don't think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ed, you Maria, you want to go?
He's ready.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Ed.
Okay. I'll be glad to go.
Stop fighting.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking along the lines of what Paul said, the most important trait, but I was thinking the question I would like to be asked is what is missing in town council? And I think some voices are missing. I think I can work very well with any of the people who are now in town council. I support a lot of the projects that they have championed and look forward to working with them. But if you just even look around this room, the only African American here was my campaign manager and one of our candidates, and he's shared with you some of the things he knows about that I bet most of you don't know about the problems getting a restraining order, because he's connected to a certain segment of the community. And I've lived here 17 years, and I'm connected to a huge segment of the community that's not represented on town council or here today. So I hope to have an opportunity to help them give voice to their concerns.
Ed, thank you.
Okay. What I wish I'd been asked, I talked about a little bit earlier, is, so Ed, you think you know so much about transportation. What do you really want to be working on in the next 4 years? And starting from the ground up, I want to work on further pedestrian planning, getting around by foot, toward a bond issue, I hope by 2017, probably as soon as we can do it without really affecting taxes, having a real good program for that, to work on the bike plan, major event October 24th, 7 p.m. at the library. It's the first real bike plan Chapel Hill's ever had, and I have been hoping for it for a long time. We're on to it. And then finally, transit, both buses and rail. I'm going to talk about the rail. It is the Durham Orange project that we're talking about. It doesn't have the word wake in it. The public meetings about it are in 6 weeks. Again, another wave of them. is about getting people into the two huge employment centers we have at this side of the triangle, UNC and Duke. It's a whole lot what it's about, and if you want a whole lot of buses or a small number of trains, take your choice.
Great, thank you. I want to thank all of the candidates. You were absolutely wonderful about adhering to the times, and I can't praise you enough for that. I was scared to death. Okay, Nick. And many thanks to our panel as well. And now we're going to hear from the mayor, and I'm only sorry that I don't have those little red, green, yellow lights that you have.
I've delegated that process now to Lee Stora. He's handling the timing.
Oh, you'll have to just put up with our fan.
I think I can handle that.
I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. It's amazing. You know, I've been thinking that this campaign seems a little quiet. You know, I'm not hearing a lot of buzz on the streets, and I'm on the streets every day. But here you are. You came to a forum to hear from some great people, great servants of our community, asking for your support, and I'm grateful for your participation in this. There are a couple of clarifications I'd like to just make sure I leave you with. One is that there are about 952,000 people in the county of Wake. 423,000 of them live in the city of Raleigh. The mayor of Raleigh, Nancy McFarland, is one of the greatest advocates for the rail system and the regional transit system, and that's just one, and the largest city in Wake County. She and I have both met with the Federal Transit Administrator in person to take them on tours of the routes. We are working with HUD Secretary Sean Donald to make sure that that system helps create additional affordable housing in every region it touches. We have strong advocates in Wake County for regional rail. This region has 1.35 million people today. Orange, Durham, and Wake County. The light rail system isn't even conceived to come until 2026. We're planning now, as you said, Paul, planning early for what we know our future is going to be. I think one of the big takeaways of this, and I think you heard a lot of it come from many of these council members, is that there is not a single solution to any one problem. The problems that we have in our community are complex, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's redesigning and upfitting a failing commercial area in our town, like Ephesus Fordham. There's not one solution that solves every part of the problem. But a lot of the things you talked about are parts of the solutions. And just because one doesn't satisfy every aspect of a problem doesn't qualify it as an utter failure. And in fact, our affordable housing program that we have so far in Chapel Hill is an extraordinary success, even though it doesn't solve every part of the problem. And we have some great ideas that you heard tonight on how we can move forward from where we are today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks very much, Mark. Okay, so now it's your turn, and I have the microphone, and I'm going to walk around and hand it to David, who has the first question.
Hi, I'm Dave Seedorf, resident 22 years. I think it's been suggested by someone tonight that we may need to look at, make a post-mortem examination of projects that we've had and see what we've learned from that. And I wonder if anyone would like to comment on that, and how would that be instituted on council?
You may pick your
Amy?
I don't know if you saw that on my poster or not, but I'm trained as a landscape architect, and one of the things that you do is you design something and you put it out in the world, and then if you can afford to do it, you see did it work? What lessons can we learn and what happened? And we have, in the last decade or so, done a lot of big projects in town. We've done Meadowmont, we have Southern Village, there are smaller ones like East 54, and as these projects come in, we hear a lot of promises about how they're going to perform, but I think that it would be time for us to go back and say, did we really get what we expected from these projects? If we didn't, then we need to figure out why, so that the next time that that issue comes up, we're better informed and we can figure out what really works for Chapel Hill and what doesn't.
Other questions? Lynn?
I first want to just comment that we have all these concerns about stormwater, and it's been my observation that pine needles need to be removed. They do clog a great deal. So I hope that we can encourage business people and homeowners to just clean up the pine needles that do accumulate. My question is about lighting. A few years ago, we learned that the current lighting is mercury-based. It can't be replaced as such. It will be very expensive to get new lighting. However, many trees are overgrowing the existing lighting, so we don't even get the 1/10 of the original lighting. How willing would the people who want to be on town council, who are on town council, be to clear away limbs from trees so that we can have better lighting?
Anybody? Sally?
I'll speak to that question just about Franklin Street, because I've actually been thinking about that myself. Nick Young Kim, who did the art at 140 West, also did a streetscape design for us, which has plans for better lighting and crosswalks and all that. We're steadily implementing that plan. There is, in fact, a trade-off between the lights and the trees, and there are glorious, gracious trees on Franklin Street that I would not want all the trees on Franklin Street cut down. I think we need to have those trees. We need to figure out a balance. I did learn that part of the problem is that you have some dark spots where there are private properties that aren't well lit. You also there are those mast arm signals. They don't have lights on them, and that's something that is going to happen in the future. So I think we'll see some improvement there. But I think it's a very interesting question. I mean, with Franklin Street, which is what I'm talking about, we do have a balance issue there in terms of the lights and the trees.
Well, let me just clarify. I mean trimming limbs, not taking down trees, and it really impedes the transportation possibilities for a lot of older people who have vision problems.
Well, if that's a maintenance problem, we can certainly get on that.
Janet? Oh, sorry.
Can I just say something about the lighting? The public library is relatively new, is that correct? And we've had meetings there. And to me, it's just common sense. If you have a light, you don't plant a tree or a bush that's going to grow underneath the light. You put a light here, and you put a tree here, and a light here, and a tree here. And this is a problem that exists at the public library right now that I noticed, in my old age. So I don't think it's that difficult to solve. You just have to think about it and be aware of it.
I'm Tom Henkel. I'm a resident of Mount Bolin Road. Every candidate up here tonight has mentioned the importance of public input into the decision-making process about development. I've been unable to participate the last few months in the Central West deliberations. I was quite active a few years ago when we had public hearings and discussion about Carolina North. In that process, I felt worked out pretty well, because the powers that be that decided what Carolina North was going to look like, they listened to public input and they incorporated many of the ideas which came from the public. For example, Carolina North buildings are going to be sited so that they are solar ready. As many of you know, I'm a solar energy professional. Now, with the Central West situation, I know that the steering committee has to, at some point, bring a report to the town council. Up to this point, it's my view that the opinion of many of the public is not being heard and incorporated in the plans being brought forth by the steering committee. For example, there was something taken to the planning board the other night which did not have the minority report. The minority people were there and they presented the report. So I want to hear from each member of the nine candidates. When this report gets to the council, are you going to take into account the public input on Central West, where 2-to-1 people are opposed to the plans which are presently being put forth.
So let's go right down the line.
Okay. Maria, you want to?
Amy wants to.
Yeah,
She was the
I
co-chair.
should probably, I'm a co-chair of the Central West process, so I should probably start here. I think it's a mistake to characterize the Central West process as not listening to citizen input, and I can tell you a few things that we've done and that we've listened and that were in the plan last night that went to the planning board. We heard very strongly that safety and walkability were issues, and we have planned for both a greenway trail and for an off-road bike trail, and for new bike paths along Estes Road, and for better crosswalks. We were very attentive to that and to the safety issues. So that's one thing. The issue of the minority report, we have looked at it. The minority report was put forth by 4 members of the committee who feel very strongly that that represents the vision that they want to see. There are 4 neighborhood members. There are 4 other neighborhood members on the committee, along with the remaining committee members, who have voted for a different vision. It is now being portrayed as a high-density, build it and chuck it full. I think this is a mischaracterization. We haven't even determined density yet. If anybody's interested, the Central West meeting tomorrow night will talk about that, or we try to, the committee members talk about it. We are recommending 3-story buildings through most of the area, which we feel is compatible with what is existing in the area currently. I think that we have listened. We haven't always agreed with everything that we've heard, but part of our job, we have been chosen as a steering committee to be representative of the public. We had a lot of discussions early on with the neighborhood members who organized it, and then later we went to council and we got our charge, and we have a very carefully balanced steering committee that includes half neighbors. It includes people from advisory boards, it includes people from UNC, from the local institutions. So we're hearing from a very, very broad group of the community on that group. So I think it pains me because I believe in the community process, and it pains me to hear that people don't feel that they were heard. I would contend that we do, and I think when we finally get to a final plan, I think that you're going to find it represents a lot of your concern.
I know a lot of folks have other questions, but I want to be real quick about this. I think on the whole, since we're live in a very technological era, it would be good if we could find ways to be able to put input online for citizens that can't actually make town meetings all the time. Perhaps creating some sort of listserv for particular projects you signed up for it. You get the updates, you can put in comments, questions, what have you, and voice your opinion on it. So that way not only do you have the in-person capability, but if you can't make that meeting for Central West or Carolina North or anything of that nature, you still feel like you can actually have a say if you so choose to do it through online mechanisms. As much, or even just getting the town council to go out and just go to different neighborhoods, talk to people individually, see what their thoughts are on these processes too, not just have everyone come to us, we should also go to them.
I went to one Central West meeting, and it was disturbing for me, and I have not been to one since. I hope that we can learn from the mistakes of the Central West Committee. I know all the members of the committee have been trying very hard to work together, and I respect them. I think at the very beginning, there should have been a moderator, and there was not. I also think there should be a town council member for something this important every single time. And if you can't be there, then you need to send somebody else. So those are 2 big mistakes that I think happened with Central West. Now, we also have the amount of the money that was spent. $90,000 to $230,000. Ed's talking about the Central West, excuse me, Old Durham Road Pedestrian Committee. Now that $130,000, or let me see, $140,000, that would build sidewalks for a few people in that area. So I hope we will learn from the Central West process how to be more successful. And I do think that we should become a part of this pilot program that's not going to cost anything called peak democracy that Durham is doing. Thank you.
I have been to a lot of the meetings of the Central West Committee, and I can't say enough about the co-chairs. And I think we owe them a big thank you, and Amy in particular. I can't tell you how difficult it is to hear accusations against people who are giving their time and energy and really have no ulterior motive other than to do the best for Chapel Hill and to, what she had says, preserve its beauty for her daughter to come back to. So I think that's really unfair. I also think there was a unanimous vote from the whole committee in support of the pedest, of the greenways, and I mean, I couldn't believe it when that vote was taken about half a week ago or so. I was so excited. I thought if they talk long enough, they understand each other, because I think we agree on a lot of things. I said something on my responses, which will be on your website, I think, when you finally get them, that I thought was going to be funny but could get me in trouble, because one of the questions there was, there are all these committees going on and we can't make all the meetings, and how do we get to give our input, exactly what you're asking. And I said, nobody but Julie McClinton can make all the committee meetings, so I understand the problem. I do think, but you can find enormous amount of information and give input online already. So I think that's really, we need to enhance that. We need to get more out in the community. But I think there are ways to participate and to give input. And I think it's unfair when the committee doesn't agree with you to say that you didn't have a chance to be heard. You were heard, you were not accepted, and your opinion didn't prevail. But they've had 30-some meetings. And I swear these people read every email they get. So, sorry.
You go down to the other table.
Hello? Okay, it's working. I have a response to Paul's point, as well as some other people who don't know, when you question about a council member at any of these committee meetings. It's a known fact that Jim Ward, who's sitting right there, is a member represents the council at the Central West. He's sitting right there. I guess he might be a little annoyed that you didn't mention the fact that he does go to those meetings. And for your other information, Donna Bell attends the Obi Creek meetings, and I believe Ed Harrison has gone to a lot of Ephesus Church meetings as well. So basically what's going on in town, the council is actively involved in the 2020 procedure. Okay. As far as the displeasure, I think Amy's doing her best, along with Michael Parker, to chair the committee meetings. And there is a little bit of a dissension, but I made a comment a couple weeks ago at the close of the meeting. It boils down to this. You have the input, but the end result is you can't satisfy everybody, and that's what basically that the committee is struggling with right now. So that's how you got to look at it. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and finish up with.
I was just going to ask where we're in the process, like, since people are getting restless and it might be good to continue other questions, could we limit people's responses to 1 minute?
For everybody's input.
Oh, I mean,
nine council members, 9 candidates.
I did not see a lot of other hands raised. Well, you had a question, David.
I got another one. If you're looking for questions.
No, not necessarily. We're at 9 o'clock. Can we proceed to another question so that we can give somebody else a chance to respond?
I mean, I didn't want
You might be able to speak with the rest of the
I don't know
members
who
here
we're going to vote
offline.
for yet, so that's okay. I don't care. I may not vote for anyone.
I didn't mean to.
That's an option. So, yes. Let's see, they're all going to come in.
You're going to be mad at you. I'm going to be mad at you. I just had one question. On the meeting that was held at Amity Church, maybe it could be for the mayor, I don't know, but I don't know who knows the answer to this. I was out of town for that meeting, I understood that there was a citizens map that wasn't allowed inside the building, that the citizens had to keep their map outside the building. I was wondering why that occurred. Like I said, I didn't go there, so I don't know who might want to answer that. I would like to know why.
I don't know. Amy, want to take that quickly?
The citizens map was presented to us at a steering committee meeting, and the committee received it, and they considered it, and they looked at it, and then the request was made that it be included in the Amity Church meeting. And the group voted and felt that since that map had been the work product of only a small group of people and was not generally accepted by the committee as a whole, that to present it as our work product would be misleading. We didn't make any attempt to suppress it. It was actually at the meeting. It was the first thing you saw when you came to that meeting was the citizens plan there at the front door. So we didn't try to suppress it, but we just said this isn't material that has been agreed on by the bulk of the committee, and that's why we don't want to present it as such. We didn't want to confuse the committee.
We have now gotten to 9 o'clock. So this should conclude our time. Now, I imagine that the candidates are willing to hang out for a bit, so feel free to approach them with individual questions that you might still have remaining. This has been a great turnout. We really appreciate your giving us your time. We appreciate the time of everybody all of the candidates, the answers to their questions, our panel, our mayor, and the organizing committee who really did a terrific job. This was really